Good afternoon. We are going to call the regular business meeting of the Klickitat County Board of County Commissioners to order. Let the record show all three commissioners are present. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
I'll do it.
You do it? Yeah, it's quite a,
I don't know.
gonna be reading for a while.
We've done roll call.
Oh,
I said all three
Okay,
commissioners are
you're right.
present.
Okay, good. Thanks, sir. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the business agenda with the add-ons under new business. Assessor Krista Schroeder discussing regarding adding a vehicle to the county motor or vehicle pool. An engagement with legal services agreement, appointing Stephen DiGiulio of Foster Garvey as special deputy prosecuting attorney to assist the county. A resolution in the matter of designated the Klickitat County Crisis Response Date Amendment, a professional service agreement with 2 crisis responders, and a resolution scheduling a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 at 1:30 to review the 2022 application for the public service grant by Washington Gorge Action Programs, and notice to contractor scheduling a bid opening for 1:30 on Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 for the Klickitat County Status Pass Radio Tower.
I will second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to approve the business agenda with all the add-ons. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I don't think we have any minutes this time. We are going to move into citizen comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual, at which time, after everyone has had a chance to provide public comment, the county commissioners may respond at that time. Like we have been doing it, we will begin, as always, in the room. If you would like to provide public comment, please come forward about anything that's not on the agenda for later.
Something else.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Vern Harpel. I'm from Lyle. And with apologies to Shakespeare, I come to praise the community council, not bury them. I've been very involved with the community mental health issues throughout the gorge for 10 years or more. And the accomplishments that you guys have made in the last couple months, resolving, well, first of all, calling to task the very poorly performing, I guess, past now, community health providers, working with Klickitat, with Skamania Interim, and now having your own county health, mental health providers in-house, literally, is a model that none of the other counties in the gorge have. They've all been outside contractor. How that works, we know, is bad. I've been talking a little bit with Aaron, and the ability for you guys, for the county now to be able to work with the sheriff's office, the jail, where we obviously keep most of our mentally ill folks, it's just going to be tremendous. You're going to be a leader in the gorge, and it's because of your guys' work. I know you don't get, this is something that most folks aren't going to ever pay much attention to, but it's huge, and you've done a spectacular job. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harpel. All right, next up, online, if you'd like to provide public comment, *6, raise your hand, or turn your video on. Were you wondering if you said community council? Yeah. I'm not seeing anyone online. Back in the room. Is there anybody else who would like to provide? Please come forward, give us your name.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Justin Sellers, and I actually live in Klamath, Washington, but I represent membership that lives out in this community, and I'm touching base with the commission on where their stances are going to be with the major energy projects that are going to be coming, and why where they're at in the process with the county commissioners, and how you guys are moving about in that process, because that's going to be a huge tax revenue for this county, obviously, and moving forward for this. And I was just curious if I could be in the loop with that. Like I said, I represent my union membership for Laborers Union. We're just completing up at the Lund Hill Solar Farm as we speak, and then wanting to know the process for the Bluebird pump station moving forward, and then the finish with the Bluebird, and then the White Creek wind farms and stuff. That's all I got really got. Sellers, if I could approach, give you guys my business card and you guys could keep me in the loop.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Names familiar. We chatted before, or you did citizen
Probably.
comment before?
Oh, yeah. I've known you quite a few times, but just want to touch bases again.
But not in person, have you?
I've been in person about 4 times.
Oh, well.
You probably know with the beard, all this right here.
Okay, next up, we have Gabrielle Gilbert.
Hi, I wanted to clarify the invitation for the childcare discussion that's going to be held in White Salmon tomorrow. The time is 5:30, and if you get on the website of the City of White Salmon, you can find under the White Salmon Let's Talk, and the header will be childcare. And if you click on that, you get the agenda, and in that agenda is the Zoom link if you're not available to be there in person. But it's tomorrow at 5:30, and we look forward to all elected representation being part of that discussion about the need for childcare in the county. And the state representatives and state senator have been invited, and they have signaled that they will be coming in via Zoom. So hopefully that will materialize. And my other comment is concerning discussion last week about the shelter, the dog animal shelter, and that there were grant dollars brought in. If the grant dollars were coming out of a representative's office as part of a capital budget request, that request would have an application, and in that application would be details to the project that they were requesting funds for. So the back and forth of pointing fingers of who is doing this and not doing this should start with the actual individual who submitted that request, because they would have received an email verifying their application, and those details of the email and what was the ideas behind the shelter would be in that application. And I hope that in investigating this, that you start with the source. And then finally, when it comes to public commentary, I think that you have to be careful of the knee-jerk reaction when you get a public comment that is, in a word, abrasive or tough. I think that it is important to understand that you are elected officials and you engaged in this position, knowing full well that the public can be vocal. And the idea that you would do sergeants in arms, or the idea that you would shorten the amount of time people have to say what they need to say to their elected officials is problematic. It is a hot kitchen politics, and therefore get gloves, because I do not condone violence of any kind. If people are threatening and leaving those kinds of threats to county workers or to county elected officials, they should be held accountable to that. And it is unacceptable to do that. And but to lose sight of the importance of the discourse between the elected officials and the public they serve, you cannot attack the process of publicly commenting. It's important to keep that for a strong government and strong social engagement and political social engagement. So thank you for your time. And I hope that each and every one of you are at the childcare discussion tomorrow at 5:30. It's important for you to show up. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Is there anybody in the room who would like to provide public comment? I am not seeing anyone. Is there anyone online who would like to provide public comment? *6 to unmute yourself, raise your hand, turn your video on. Lisa Evans.
Good afternoon, County Commissioners. My name's Lisa Evans. I live in White Salmon. First of all, I would just like to say it is Election Day, and I hope everyone has returned their ballots. And on that note, I just want to say thank you to all of the County Commissioners that are sitting there, sitting at your places right now. I want to thank all of you because you guys were all at one point candidates, and you ran in tough races, and then you won your races, and you are sitting in those seats. And I would say that there needs to be respect for that process that you guys went through. We don't always agree with everything that you do, but the fact that you were democratically elected to your seat, that is deserving of respect. That means that a conversation needs to be had. You know, I come to some of these public comments and I cannot believe how some people rant at you, and that is not that does not leave open to a two-way conversation. So I just want to say thank you guys for the hard work that you've done. And on that note, I will also just say thank you to County Commissioner Dave Sauter, who is finishing up 12 years, I believe, if I'm correct. He has taken a lot of phone calls from me. He has given me a lot of good advice. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the time that you've put into our county. And we will miss you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment to the Board of County Commissioners, online or in the room? Oh, please come forward.
Hello, Kathy Moko, Goldendale. I want to commend you all for all the wonderful new parking lots downtown Goldendale and all around the courthouse. I've been watching for the last while. I understand the county Public Works did the work, which is excellent, because I was here when you all opened the bid, the only bid from outside, which was rather huge. Anyway, it looks really, really good. And I know there's been some concern in the past with parking and the stores downtown being impacted. So this will make a big difference. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Ms. Moko. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment to the Board of County Commissioners, online or in the room? Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment?
Just to follow up about the child care conference tomorrow. I heard about in White Salmon. If when your term comes up, could any of you say if you're going to be going, working with trying to get a child care center started in Lyle? And I did not know about this, and I won't be able to attend. attend, but if any of you are going to it, I'd like to know about that, what you know about it.
We will be responding. Elaine Harvey.
Good afternoon, Elaine Harvey, Goldendale. I'm a county taxpayer citizen for many years. Don't plan on going anywhere, but I'm just hoping that with all these new parking lots, that all citizens of the county can park in them and won't get chased out. And that would free up some space on Main Street for patrons instead of employees and staff. So that's just my comment that hopefully the county commissioners won't be parking attendants and chasing out citizens of the county off of the parking lots. Because I think, we're all paying our taxes. And then also we have an increase of 30 to 40% taxes, it seems, by many of the county residents. And I really don't understand why no one's questioning that. And I wonder if that we're paying higher taxes because of the depreciation of the wind farms. And if that's going to happen in the future with the solar farms, where us county citizens are going to pick up the slack and pay those taxes. Like, I've seen a huge increase in my property taxes. And to the other county residents, I've heard the same. So hopefully I won't get chased out again because of my skin color. And, I just want to be treated equally as a resident. So I just want to share. Thanks. And I'm talking as a resident today.
Thank you, Ms. Harvey. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment to the Board of County Commissioners? Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment to the Board of County Commissioners? Last chance. Is there anyone who would like to provide public comment to the Board of County Commissioners? Raise your hand, *6, turn your video on. Okay. Would either of my seatmates like to respond to anyone?
Want me to go first? I'll take a shot at a couple of them. First, I guess the last first, Mr. Harpole, yeah, I do plan on actually attending in White Salmon in person tomorrow. I didn't think I was going to be able to, but my schedule got freed up. So I'm curious, and I don't know if any of us, who else is, via Zoom or whatever. It's nice that there's a Zoom link, but I am going to be there in person. And that's also to Miss Gilbert as well. So you should see me there. And also to Miss Gilbert, I concur with your comments about the public having access to their elected officials. I don't want anything that I've said as a member of the board or the board has said in general to be taken that we're looking at ways of limiting interaction with the public. I don't think we are. What we're looking to try to enforce is that folks follow the rules and that it's not disruptive of the process. And that was my interactions last week with Dell, was, again, I think there is the Board of Commissioners meetings is the board's meeting. It is not a public forum. It is not a town hall. It is not, public comment is that section of the meeting that is like a public forum or a town hall. But the board has a lot of business to do, and it is their business to do on behalf. That's our job. And so what I don't like to see is when that is disrupted and we are unable to do that business. I believe people need to follow the rules. And as far as, and if we talk to each other respectfully, and I welcome those conversations, and I don't want anything that's been said to have the impression that I don't want to have that or that I don't support that. I do. I think we need to hear from folks. And just to set the record straight, Ms. Evans, I'm actually closing out 16 years, not 12. It only seems like 1,200, but it seems but I will accept your thank you. And yes, Ms. Moko, the parking lots, it was nice. I think the county crew did a great job. I didn't know, we generally don't do a lot of paving. We do chip sealing, and so I was pleasantly surprised that and the concrete work that got done, top rate work, as far as, and that had saved the taxpayers quite a bit of money by us doing it in-house based on what that bid was for stuff. So I'm glad we were able to do it. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Christopher.
Okay. To Vern, about the childcare meeting, I do plan on attending via Zoom. Justin, yes. It would be probably good to set up a time to chat with me or come in or over the phone or whatever, just so I can kind of pick your brain on some workforce there. Childcare thing kind of answered Gabrielle's comments. I do agree with Gabrielle's comments that the public should be able to say what they want to say without getting a spur of the moment heated reaction. And as I'm sure she's well aware, I fell for that once. I think since then I've been better, and I need to continue to try to be better. But you're definitely right on that. Lisa, I agree with your statements. Kathy in the parking, I'll second what Dave said about Public Works doing a good job. Elaine Harvey, and here's the hard one. So while I agree with the citizens' right to be able to speak freely and openly to their commissioners in a civil matter, regardless of what they say, I believe everyone has the First Amendment right to free speech of whatever you want to say, including if that statement is a lie. And your statement that, quote, chased out again because of your skin color, ma'am, that statement is an absolute lie. And I just have to call it as such. And the only racial remark that was even made that day was made by you, ma'am. So please don't continue to disparage my name with your inaccurate, unfactual allegations. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Christopher. I plan on attending the Child Care Committee, likely via Zoom. I don't plan on speaking because it's not an open public meeting for us, but I do plan on listening in. Mr. Sellers, do you know how many of your local laborers union members worked on that on the project you were speaking about? I'm going to repeat it just so that everyone knows. He said the laborers union had 125 at the peak.
Do you want the other numbers I could stand up and tell you for that?
Sure, come on up, and since you drove all the way down here.
At the peak for the laborers, we had about 125. So at the trades, the IBW peaked out at about 400, I want to say on that
That
one.
electrical union?
Yes. And then the iron workers, I think we're right around 45 to 50 moving across. And that project itself, I think, was right at about 18 months long. And then the pump storage, as you guys well know, the one John Day will push almost 2,000 to 3,000 people working. which will hopefully get an agreement after the job's done to have another 200 to 500 members or, people of this area stay on working with the union wages itself and benefits. It'd be nice.
Questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it up to you guys when you're doing negotiations with these companies to mandate that so much of the workforce is apprenticeship program for local residents? How does that play out?
So for the apprenticeship program, it's set by the state standards itself, and they came in at, right now, I believe with the new energy projects, they're set at between 15 and 25%. On this one project itself, we had, I think at the peak, we had 12 apprentices working just out of our jurisdiction, not including the IBW, the ironworkers or whatnot. But it is something that's definitely pushed hard upon to train the newer generation coming up and whatnot. And will be set with all the other projects in this area that will be going. As you guys know, with big energy usually comes mass projects.
Yeah. Well, and are I know the other skilled trade union trades are having more retirees than they're having apprentices starting. Is the laborers union kind of running into the same baby boomer retiring and not as many workers taking the jobs as the other skilled trades?
No, we usually keep a pretty even basis moving forward. I mean, our union inside of Washington State's right around between 13 to 15,000 members. So I mean, we usually have and right now I think out of that we have 1,500 apprentices out of our union itself. I can't speak for the others, obviously.
Okay.
Sorry to take up so much time. We need to chat.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. In response to your other comments, the Bluebird is still in permitting. It hasn't been in front of us. Pump storage still has at least another year on the environmental process. So that's a few years out. And you guys are done at Lund Hill, correct?
As of the 18th, it'll be finally completed.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update we hadn't heard. Ms. Evans, thank you for your comments as always. I have to say, for the most part, this has been for it being, a big election day, it was nearly all the comments were very polite and respectful. And then Ms. Harvey, part of our agreement when we built this building was to increase the number of parking spaces available downtown. And we successfully did that. There will be some parking lots that we will have, or parking spots that we'll have cordoned off for our new fleet vehicles. But for the most part, most of these parking spots are available to the public for employees and generally anybody, the public at large. And I think that's all I have. I'm not missing any. And to Vern, thank you for your kind comments. It's been a long slog, and we're still getting started, and we got a long ways to go. Thank you. With that, I'm going to close public comment for the day. Thank you all for logging on. We will move into our miscellaneous reports from the Lisle Community Council. Vern, if you would please come forward.
I have the actual signed letter. I had emailed the regular letter, but here's the signed one. So, and they have
Yep. We've had a chance.
and just sort of show and tell. Here's the pictures.
Thank you.
Beautiful barrier. I'm asking for consideration to be removed. You all are aware that I've been here haranguing for a year or two or 10 or 20. Well,
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. That was actually perfect.
well, and one of our commissioners up on the dais right there is also quite involved with this. Just for the folks' background, we have a Forest Service property that has recently reluctantly agreed that there is some sort of possible easement. I would ask Commissioner Sauter to keep me honest, but they recently reviewed it in our meetings with them, and they admit that yes, the property came with an easement. There's some sort of a disagreement of what legal term it might be of an easement, but there is an easement. The Forest Service admits it. The barrier is clearly on highway department property, not the railroad. You can see from the first picture that that barrier is just a few feet off the road. When you look at the county maps, it's maybe a joint property. You know, a lot of times Highway 14 and the railroad are ridiculously close to each other, but in this spot, they're not. The overriding concern is the accidents, one accident and a couple different times, incidents where our emergency services folks could not get to this fully recognized recreational property. People getting to that recreational property properly, not crossing the railroad tracks, but actually taking the boat around. So there's no issue. There is a recreational property there that EMS folks cannot get to. And they have been the ones primarily urging the community council to do something about this barrier. But when we started investigating, there is an easement. It's not properly, it's not any sort of code. It's just that as you look, you get closer and closer, it's just a jury-rigged mess, actually, with 3 different wrenches soldered or welded into a gate that doesn't work. It's terrible. It's not wide enough for a stretcher to go through. It's ugly. And we, the people of Lyle, have no idea how to proceed except to ask the county to ask the highway department to remove it or get permission from them for you guys to remove it, and have the Forest Service and the railroad and the highway department negotiate a properly built 2-code negotiated settlement so that there can be EMS access to the site. We understand that the relationship between the county and maybe the railroad and the highway department is contentious. I think any relationship with the railroad is contentious. And so I would, if you guys can be candid in some way or other, give us ideas on where maybe to proceed. One of our thoughts is we have no standing, but our fire department, emergency services folks, as an elected tax-paying district, has standing. And would it be best for them to approach you, the state, the county, the whoever, if you don't want to take on this? But you just give me some political ideas on where to go here. My partner in crime, I think, is with us as well. I'd like to introduce Chris Soling. He's on our Lyle Community Council access. Chris, do you have any, can I ask, you want to talk?
Oh, well, the only thing I would say is to echo your comments, and that one of the difficulties that Vern has expressed to me, because my comment to Vern was, well, isn't it on Department of Transportation property? And that is that Vern and the council have been rebuffed repeatedly in terms of direct contact with them. And so that's why we're really approaching you all as our representative body to help with this. And from my perspective, looking at it just a little more from a legal perspective. It wasn't permitted. It's not on proper, the right property, and it just doesn't belong there. And we could certainly use your help in facilitating getting it removed. And then if they want to build it properly, they can do that. And what's disappointing is how one-sided interacting with the railroad is. It always seems like heads they win, tails you lose, in terms of when you want to approach them, they're full of bureaucracy, et cetera, but this was just built, I think, not in the dead of night, but just put there without any notice to anyone. And they also left a whole bunch of boulders up on top that I think are probably a traffic hazard as well. So what we're not wanting to do is increase traffic down there. It's primarily for emergency access. And most recently, when someone was injured down there, they had to take him up on a gurney up on the cliff, and probably did as much damage to the poor victim getting him out of there as he suffered when he had the accident. And so this is really a life safety issue that we hope you all would be interested enough to take the torch, and will help and do what needs to be done.
Thank you, Christopher. Commissioner Sauter, this has been yours for a while.
Yes, for 16 years, apparently.
You grew up there.
Yes.
About 55 years.
Yeah. Well, never mind. More than 55. So not that much more. But yes, the difficulty we are having and have had is the question of, like, again, I completely agree. I'm obviously on this committee with you. I'm of the same mind that this, especially for life safety, there needs to be some way to have emergency access down there. When accidents happen, one happened. I mean, we have real life experience. This is not a theoretical problem. It's an actual problem, and it does happen when people are there. The biggest issue we have that we are struggling with is what our standing as the county. We don't own the property. We don't have an interaction. We have basically an illegal placement on somebody else's land, impacting a third party's easement, and none of the three parties seem to care.
Exactly.
And so if any one of the three, the three of them have standing. And so we're always left with trying to get you to care about your easement for a service, you, WashDOT, to care about your right of way, and you, railroad, to care about people getting hurt and not being able to get them out there and save them. And as we all know, Chris and Vern and myself, is none of those three seem to really care. And I think we can certainly advocate for that. We're all about processes. So for whatever reason, it isn't that, if the Forest Service doesn't want to defend its easement, WashDOT should certainly have to defend its process for if you're going to place something on WashDOT right away. If I want to go put a sign up,
Yeah.
there's a whole process I have to go through, and it's generally no, they don't want you to do that. But there is a whole public process. This obviously is not. My concern is that the railroad would say, okay, us and WashDOT, wink, wink, we get it. And they'll go and they'll take this, and then we'll go down and move it to where it's on the railroad's right of way, and which they could do. I think the one positive thing is that anything that forces a process forces discussion, and it forces education, and the parties, the three of them, have to be able to answer those hard questions. Forest Service, why aren't you defending this easement? We finally, they didn't know they had one, or didn't want to know they had one. And it was really through this process that it's like, yeah, you do. Why aren't you defending it? And same with washed out. Well, it's not us, it's the railroad. It's not on our right. It's like, no, that's actually not true. And so, and I know that our county department has done quite a bit of work as far as the GIS, as far as with the research and the records, with
Yeah.
the stuff that
It helped
Vern
a
and
lot.
Chris have came up with, so that we have a better understanding of what's going on. But the fundamental problem is the three entities that actually have standing they don't want to, it's like they don't have a dog in the fight. So we are left as the entity of last resort of caring.
Would the Gorge Commission be an advocate helper? Should I take this to them?
I want to say in a perfect world, yes, but I think from a practical,
Okay.
the Forest Service in their role is the commission. I mean, they're acting in that
Oh,
role.
okay, okay.
I mean, because I am intrigued by the fire district having more of a say, just because again, that's a really good story to tell because it actually happened. So it's not some academic thing. Somebody really got hurt and it was significantly delayed. Somebody could have, it could be life-threatening at some point. It may have been. Are we going to wait for that where somebody's going to die because they were busy dragging them up over the bluff to get around Stalag 13 here that they've got? Where again, you could have a barrier. I think we can start with something like we can have the whole discussion about access. That's a much bigger thing.
Exactly.
And that's going to be years, but we can have where you can be a good neighbor in that you have public land that however people are getting there, right or wrong, they're there. They can get hurt, and you have now created a situation that you can't, because you're a bad neighbor, because you built some unmovable thing. And again, the first step is like, you can have your barrier if you want, but do it in such a way that it's actually accessible. And if there is an emergency, there's some way to get that short of a tank.
There's a very specific guideline of how big an access to a recreational site should be. We can quote chapter and verse of Washington state rules. If the fire district was to come to you, or should the fire district should go to the WASDOT where do we go?
Well, I think we can help as far as, I'm going to push on my seatmates to do something where we have some support or something that we can do, and we can help as far as facilitating. But in the end, in many ways, the fire district actually has more standing than we do.
That's what I think Chris thinks that too. How about our sheriff's department? Is that some sort of it's on the state, so can the sheriff say it's bad? Or is that?
Well, the sheriff can say that about anything if he wants. But again, as far as
he doesn't like immunizations, maybe he doesn't like barriers too.
Well, no, but again, I think that the thing that will be the most difficult to ignore is that access for emergency services, given we've had a recent event. You can't just push that away and say, oh, the chances of that ever happening.
No,
it actually can happen, and it did happen. And are we just going to wait until somebody dies?
Yeah, people are doing dangerous stuff out
They
there.
are.
Kiting and winging and I don't know whating anymore. And there's also people.
Could I ask a question? And I wonder if the county doesn't have jurisdiction because through the planning department, and what this really is, it essentially is an illegal structure that was put up that's not permitted and doesn't comply with anything. And I guess the question is, how is planning for structures on, for example, state land? I assume that they have to interact with the county as well as the railroad. And for example, the railroad can't just put up a billboard, but there has to be some sort of planning process. And I think, but I don't know for certain, and hope that one of you three do, that it would fall to the county to approve a building permit for something like this. And then if that is the case, it would seem that the Lyle Council or Vern or I would have standing to complain about an unpermitted structure, just like if it were built on anybody's property. And you say, well, that shouldn't be there. That's a 20-foot high fence, and invoke the planning department. Is that something that's got some teeth to it?
I think because
probably
it's within the
preemptive.
Gorge Commission bounds, it would be the Gorge Commission, not the county.
And it's also, I don't know even, I mean, we still have, building permit authority within the scenic area, but I'm thinking we may be preempted on state, like on WashDOT, because I'm not familiar with us ever seeing a permit on any construction activities within the WashDOT right of way, and certainly not the railroad. When they did that second track project east of Lyle 10 years or 15 years ago, that they did have a scenic area process, I guess. It was, they did not go through us for any kind of permitting or anything. So I think,
Okay.
I think they preempt us. I think they do whatever they want.
So yeah, that was kind of my thinking, was code violation and building permit wise, but I agree with you. I think they do preempt us. But in the same regard, I don't know how ideally the fire department or the first responders wouldn't be able to file a code complaint, a code violation on their building on an easement. But again, like Commissioner Sauter said, that might get them to move the Great Wall down the hill farther. But at least then maybe they might make it wider and put in a bigger gate where you can actually get a gurney through.
Yeah, and get them,
If it actually got moved. But I think that's kind of where it is whatever code violation, code complaint to the state right of way. I do like the fire department complaint angle
Okay.
to the state, because I think they have more standing than we do.
well, that's,
And as far as the sheriff stuff, I don't know, you'd have to talk to him on that one.
I have a follow-up question.
Please, Commissioner.
Will there be because my understanding is the WashDOT representative is going to participate tomorrow. Is that tomorrow night?
with the Lyle Community Council.
At the Lyle Community Council, and I would have if the fire department.
They will be there.
Okay, so and I
Absolutely.
would make sure, and I know they're going to, the WashDOT's going to Zoom in. They're not coming in person, which is unfortunate, but in these days, that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I guess, and it is. And so these, a lot of these questions they may be able to, I don't think you're going to get any solid concrete answers. But it would at least about the process, and I would focus on that. It'd be,
Absolutely, yeah. It has to be
okay, if this
process.
if I wanted to build something like this on WashDOT's right of way, what would that process be? And make them explain that and I know it is a lengthy public, because again, it's the public's right of way. It's just like we do. If we have something, somebody wants to actually construct something in our right of way, and there's all these standards for it that have to be adhered to. And I would get them to, it's like, we'd like to see the application in the process, because we know there wasn't one, because it did sort of appear.
And there is a possibility it will just disappear someday too. There are heavy construction folks.
Well, what
who
a
are
thought
off-
occurs to me though, is that I think that would be a really good question, because I think it is we have our local land use policies, but as Commissioner Anderson, this is in the scenic area, and you can't do anything with that. There would also be they're not exempt from, because again, that when they did the track extension, they had to go through, they didn't want to, but they did have to go through it. And so that would be the other thing. So there could be a scenic area component where it's like, WashDOT has a process. Where was the scenic area permit? We'd like to see that as well. Well, we know there isn't one.
Right, and that's also back to the code violation, with the scenic area, I'd file it there too.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just keep hammering away at this, that, and the other. And
So I am worried though that, you know, if we look at other recreational areas along these tracks, and I'm thinking of the mouth of the White Salmon, and they put up a fence on both sides of the bridge, and if you want to get down there to that you got to go underneath the bridge. And, you know, we know they didn't get a scenic area permit because none of these blocks were painted rock color.
Right?
And so.
That is good, yeah.
You might have an option there, but again, you're going to hear back from the railroad, and the railroad's going to say, this is public safety, and we're providing for public safety by stopping people from going across that because it doesn't meet all the requirements. And so you may be able to say, hey, well then take off that middle block and put a different gate there so that we can get down there during it. And that might be the best you're going to get for a long time.
well, and again, our long-term goal is to establish a base of community, county support with the railroad being the bad guy, and then we start kicking it up the political ladder. I think at some point, our senators will probably have to talk to some railroad lobbyists, and that's maybe how the real world works. But anyway, I appreciate your time and support, and we'll keep you apprised.
I bet you if you took this boundary right here and you went up and held or hung a bunch of reflective vests on it, kind of like they did at the WashDOT office over here, they'd probably go in there and WashDOT would probably pull that sucker down right back.
Well, it's going to take some sort of a public effort to. Anyway, it's going to be fun to see if this gets removed before the Hood River Bridge gets built.
Well, Vern, we also have an underpass in Benton and
Yes,
$20 million.
we'll put that.
And having sat through those meetings with the railroad, I'm sorry that you took on such a Herculean task
Yes.
as this, when there's so many easy wins out there.
And so this is, I got your attention for 1 second, the childcare issue. We have a building that was built as a kindergarten and grade school in Lowell that is almost up to code for a childcare center that David actually went to grade school in. And we are all ready to go.
Stagecoach stops?
We're all ready to go for a childcare center in Lyle, but as you all know, the training requirements and the commissioning requirements are just insufferable. It takes years of training to get a childcare center, and nobody can keep up with the requirements. And so hopefully I won't be able to attend the meeting tomorrow night because I'm at the Lyle Community Council thing, but you guys, David, if you could come back to me with if there's any hope for us to get that done.
Vern, we did have recently, you don't think you were on, but we do have a licensed childcare facility in the county that just got done. And that went through that training program, I guess, WAGAP's program
Yeah,
that put
yeah.
those things together. And so,
And we've looked into WAGAP and
It
they've
is
got all
possible.
the facilities. It's just the amount of personnel it takes to go through all of it.
It's the in-home is unfortunately easier than the actual facility.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
it's
The
nuts.
training and the manual and the book, and you have to
Yes,
jump through this
I
many
saw it.
hoops. And unfortunately, I think until they remove about every other page out of that binder at the legislature, ain't gonna fix the issue.
Thanks for your
Thank you,
time.
Vern.
Okay, thanks for.
okay, next up, and we're actually on time. Do we want to do the consent agenda now or just push it off?
All right. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with 7 items.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with 7 items. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Pay the bills.
Yep, and while we're paying the bills, Leslie and Kenny, would you like to come forward?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve accounts payable warrants in the amount of $1,081,559.04 for the date ending November 7th, 2022.
I would second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to pay the bills. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative Presentation from the Washington Gorge Action Programs Executive Director, Leslie Naramore, and Kenny LaPont with the Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. Thank you for coming.
Is there a Wi-Fi password? I have a presentation that I would like to get on Zoom and present, but I'm not sure.
County
Okay.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but
Okay.
to present it, oh, I guess if she can
Can
get
she just be
online.
a-
Yeah, a guest.
Share.
Share her screen, yeah.
Yep.
Ah, okay.
Make sure you're missing, sir.
Nah.
Some house cleaning up here.
So yes, that would be great.
Okay.
So I'm Leslie Naramore. I'm the Executive Director of WAGAP. Today I have Kenny LaPointe with me, and he's gonna just do a really brief overview while I'm trying to get connected.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Leslie mentioned, I'm Kenny LaPointe. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. We're a similar agency to WAGAP. We're on the Oregon side of the Columbia, so we serve Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties on that side. We're here to present on the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative, which is a fairly new collaborative that started to do work around pulling together a regional strategic plan to address homelessness. We were fortunate enough to receive $35,000 from Providence Health Systems to fund the development of a regional strategic plan. I think what is very unique about this effort, it is the first time that there has been collaboration from the Oregon and Washington sides of the Columbia River to develop a regional strategic plan. We know that folks who are experiencing poverty, homelessness, housing instability, they don't know, city and county boundary lines in many cases. They travel to where resources, including housing, are available to them, which can put them in many different parts of our 5-county area. So they may not stay on the Oregon side, they may not stay on the Washington side. So there was a lot of reason for us to work together in developing this regional strategic plan. We started work on developing the strategic plan about a year ago, beginning of this year. We were funded at the end of last year. We hired a couple folks to assist us in the plan development. We pulled together tons of agencies in the process. City and county government was involved. We had folks working with law enforcement, folks working on the social service side outside of housing, healthcare providers. We had people who actually had experienced poverty or homelessness themselves historically who were involved in that. So a lot of effort was gone into pulling the strategic plan together. The plan was just released publicly a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to give you an overview of what is in that plan as we're now in the phases of operationalizing it, which is where the tough work begins, making sure we're able to set some work strategies and moving forward to achieve the goals that are outlined in the plan. I think Kelly is passing out a nice little printout of the plan summary itself, as well as a full copy of the plan. This is not like a big bureaucratic document. We tried to keep it simple and easily accessible for folks. We have set up a website where you can access the plan details and information. And it is a 5-year plan, as you can see there. With that, I think we're set up, and
Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that.
I will also introduce Kelly Horvath. Kelly works at Mid-Columbia Community Action Council and is our Director of Housing Stabilization. So is helping to move the plan forward from an implementation standpoint on our side of things.
Thank you for having us. All right, so as Kenny mentioned, this has been a work in progress for a while in our region. We have had a lot of efforts that have happened locally, but we've never had one that encapsulated the gorge as a region and looked at both sides of the river. Because like Kenny said, you know, our clients don't think along state lines. And so when we're trying to solve this problem, we need to not think along state lines either, because the gorge is a region. A lot of people live on one side, shop on the other. People just go back and forth all of the time. So we've had many efforts that have tried to do this work, but this is the first time that we've had both Oregon and Washington people who are invested in the project. And do you want to go ahead and do this one?
And within that context, we worked with close to 40 different partner organizations to actually come up with the strategic plan and to lay out kind of the guiding principles and values for the collaborative in general. So over this slide and the next one, you can see a lot of those partner organizations and their logos. We had everyone from healthcare providers to social service providers to local governments to individuals with lived experience being homeless to other partners in the community. And we are excited to continue expanding participation in the collaborative as we move forward into the implementation phase of the strategic plan.
So this was our vision, and as Kelly mentioned, we had people with lived experience who participated in this collaborative. We really tried to follow the nothing about us without us model. And we know that the people who are experiencing these problems are going to have a unique perspective on how to fix them. So we tried to incorporate their voices throughout the whole process. This was the vision that we came up with. You'll notice that we mentioned equitable opportunities and support. We really feel that everybody deserves a place to live. Everybody deserves the dignity that comes with having a home, having a roof over your head, being able to shower, being able to have. So as we brought together our mission and our values, those were the things that we really tried to keep in the forefront of our mind. Same thing with our values. We really tried to focus on compassion and humanity, collaboration and partnership, advocacy. That's why we're here today. Some of you might remember we hosted the Gorge Affordable Housing Roundtables. I think Commissioner Sauter attended one of those. And those were really focused on making sure that people in our community know how to advocate for affordable housing, know how to advocate for their community. We know that a lot of times when projects are in the works, the only people that you all hear from are the people who are against it. And so when we thought about this work, we really want to make sure that all of our neighbors who are in support of projects that bring more affordable housing know how to go out and advocate for that.
And then Leslie mentioned that equity is a value of ours and a priority. And I won't read the whole equity statement, but the collaborative did feel that it was important to outline, the collective group's commitment to equity and a few kind of key action steps that we'll take and plan to use as a thread throughout our work as we move into the implementation phase of this plan. Are finding and addressing root causes of inequity, both in our work and our own lives, improving housing systems where personal identities predict inequitable outcomes, using data to drive decisions and focus resources so equity isn't just a concept but a practice, and then including the voices of people who are or have been houseless with a focus on communities of color.
Can I ask a question on that? Because you're improving housing systems. What you give me an example of what a housing system is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that, if you think about affordable housing and rent assistance that comes along with that, considering how you might be able to better partner within that system with organizations that provide culturally specific services to the Native American community, right? So that's one example of the type of thing we're talking about with that.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was, but I thought, well, maybe there's something I'm not thinking of.
Right.
I thought it was a new idea.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure as you're familiar in local government with bureaucracy,
Right.
it's the same thing in the affordable housing system, We do have all of this funding to help people, but then we also have all of these hoops that they have to jump through to get services. So we want to make sure that we're doing that in an equitable way so that no matter who they are, they can get involved in the system and get the help that they need.
The bureaucracy is equally burdensome on everyone.
Yes. That's one way to put it. So in our strategic plan, we had 4 key goal areas: shelter, services, housing, and advocacy. For shelter, we want to increase the amount of shelter beds that we have available so that when we have a homeless or a houseless person who comes to us, we have a place that they can immediately go. But then we know that having shelters is really just a Band-Aid. And so when we put them into a shelter, we need to make sure then that we have the services and the housing that we need to get them from the shelter into a long-term solution. One of the things with services that we're trying to do is make sure that we have one-stop services so that when someone comes in, they're getting wraparound case management and we're not having them come in and then telling them, okay, if you need this, you go here, here for this, but everything can be taken care of in that one first stop. And then housing, we, I think, are all very familiar with our housing crisis in the region. It's not just Klickitat County, it's not just Washington State, it's not just Oregon, it's a nationwide problem that we're trying to change. And so we know that we have to have more housing, specifically affordable housing, because that's something that affects everyone. The things that make our county such a desirable place to live are also the things that are forcing out our workforce. And we know that if we want to keep our area having all of those attractions that bring people in, then we also have to have a workforce. And unfortunately, right now, our workforce is getting pushed further and further out. And then advocacy, again, this is something that we can all do. So just knowing that we have a voice and we can make a difference as long as we use that voice. So our strategic priorities, this goes again back to the systems, making sure that we have systems that are inclusive and that we're coordinating. So one of the things that happens when we have a houseless person who comes in, they go through something called coordinated entry. And that means that no matter where they go, they're going to receive the same services. So WAGAP is the coordinated entry point for Klickitat and Skamania counties. So we also handle clients for the housing authority so that no matter where someone comes in, they're going through the same process. And so we're hoping that we can better coordinate that across our region, not just in our counties, so that people going in anywhere, Oregon or Washington, are going to be hearing the same thing and receiving the same services. And then making sure that we have funding. And, funding is always something that is hard to come by, particularly if you're outside of the larger counties. In our rural counties, a lot of times we kind of get left behind with all of the housing funding that happens because it's going to an area that has more people.
So, and I'll just say an example of coordination is recently, actually this summertime with WAGAP and Mid-Columbia Community Action, we worked together to establish thresholds and openings for cooling centers across the region, as we had pretty significant heat this last summertime. And then we just did the same exact thing for winter warming shelters. So we just put out a press release yesterday that talked about the coordinated shelter system and how to access those services across the entire sort of 5-county gorge region. So we work together on that, which hasn't been done historically. Historically, WAGAP and our agency or our region have issued our own separate releases, set our own separate criteria, and now we're working together to do that. The second goal area is around services. So we realized that we have folks who are entering the shelter system who are in need of housing services. They're experiencing houselessness. They often come with behavioral health issues. They might be coming out of incarceration. They might have other issues that need to be dealt with, and we need to make sure that we have services that match the needs of the client. So we can't simply place somebody into permanent housing without having the access to services that they need to be successful in that housing. Otherwise, we're setting them up for failure in the long run. So we need to make sure that those services are available. That includes behavioral health services, physical health services in some cases. We work on jail diversion programs, so having the criminal justice system involved in making sure people have adequate services, access to employment so folks can increase their income, earnings, eventually, hopefully afford permanent housing on their own. Physical health services as well. Physical health is a big issue for folks experiencing housing instability and homelessness. And if anybody has had themselves a health issue or a family member with a health issue, you can completely overturn your household. I, in particular, have a kiddo, not such a kid anymore, but is now 18, but she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 9, and that completely changed the way our family had to work on a day-to-day basis. And I can't imagine if you were in a very fragile environment economically, how you would be able to, continue to maintain housing. In some cases, it's an expensive disease, and a lot of folks are impacted by it.
And then our third goal area is housing, because we know that actually having affordable places for people to live is a key piece of the puzzle here. So you'll see that some of our strategic priorities related to this goal area include specific goals about the number of units that we would like to help get developed in this 5-county region in the Mid-Columbia area. And you can find a list of the projects that would comprise those units on page 17 of the full strategic plan that we handed out to all of you. We also want to work together to help preserve the area's existing supply of affordable housing and make sure that we're not losing additional affordable housing stock, even as we're trying to build new.
How do you preserve?
Yeah, so in some cases, there may be subsidies that are set to expire, and working together to make sure we have a plan for helping extend those. There are a variety of different strategies, including helping folks who live in mobile home parks to either take collective ownership of those parks so they don't end up getting priced out or having rent increases that make it impossible for them to stay there. So that's actually one of the goals in our plan, is to develop some recommendations and more specific kind of reports on preservation opportunities in the region, so we can have a strategic approach specifically to that topic.
Good answer.
And I would also
Good
add,
answer.
I would also add to that, a real life example is Rhine Village, which is located in White Salmon behind Skyline. It was built in the 70s. It's not in the best condition. It's now going under the ownership of the Housing Authority, and one of their plans is to rehab that. And eventually down the line, I'm not sure if they're going to put more units, they might, but they're at least taking that on to preserve that affordable housing that is currently there that is kind of in disrepair.
That project, again, the preservation, and I'm on the housing board, so
Yeah.
that's one of the projects we're looking at. But when because most of them, they have, they're either tax credit projects and they have guaranteed affordability for a period of time. Well, that period of time expires, and then it can convert to market if the owner so chooses. And so, yeah, in the case of Rhine Village, where it's a pretty significant rehab project, which the rehab is more than the thing cost when it was built, but
Right.
that's deferred maintenance And so it'll be like a new facility when it's done, which will still be way cheaper than you would build a new facility today for that, but it'll roll over. And so then I think we have to, by getting the dollars in, I think we have to guarantee affordability for, 20 or 25 years, maybe 30 years out. So that project will not, it'll stay in the affordable for the next 25 or 30 years. And that's the payback from the public dollars being invested into it.
If you lose, we're trying to build 262 new affordable homes, but if you lose, 100 at the same time, you haven't really gained what you had hoped to gain during that time. So you got to keep reinvesting capital into those projects that have been affordable for a long time, and now their affordability period, as Commissioner Sauter mentioned, has run out. You need to reinvest in them. They need to be improved anyways because they likely have capital needs. So you throw some more money into them and they extend the
So
affordability.
same thing like the one that's in Roosevelt, its 20 years has expired, and it could get, of course, market in Roosevelt is.
Still 80% AMI.
Right, yeah.
I'll just highlight that then the last key priorities for this goal area are, again, related to our equity values as a collaborative and ensuring that we're coordinating with organizations that especially serve communities of color and other underserved populations to ensure access to housing units as they're brought online, even in terms of just straight up outreach and advertising, making sure that's in language. We have street outreach workers who go on the Columbia River to the in-lieu sites where a lot of fishing happens among our Native American neighbors. And we want to make sure that, we're living out those equity values as we hopefully bring more units online for the communities in this region. And then just also ensuring that we're helping community leaders as well as the public understand the need for more affordable and accessible housing. And like Leslie mentioned, connecting the dots. I think that, there can be lots of different challenges that are put forward in the face of constructing additional affordable housing or even preserving it. And we want to make sure that we're helping folks understand the significance of that to our local economy, to our friends, families, and neighbors who are being priced out of our communities, and just make sure that we help connect those dots and tell the story. So those are our kind of key areas in the housing realm.
And then our last goal area is advocacy, which I had briefly mentioned before. Just making sure that our community understands what the needs are and what they can do to support that. We're calling this our roadshow. You guys are the second stop. We're going around to all of our counties and all of our cities and making sure that all of our leaders understand that this work is happening and that there is a strategic plan that has been put in place. And when we put this strategic plan together, it's a living document. It's something that isn't just going to go on a shelf and get dusty. This is something that we are actively working on. We were very strategic with the goals that we put in place. We wanted to make sure that they were things that we could actually accomplish. And I think that everything that's in the strategic plan is doable. And at the end of this plan, fingers crossed, we're going to have accomplished the work. Another thing that we are wanting to do is making sure that we're using data and making sure that people understand what houselessness looks like in our region. Because, when you look around out here, you don't really see houselessness, but we do have people who are houseless. It just looks a lot different in a rural area than it does in a place like Portland. But we do have houseless people here. Normally, they are doubled up. They're couch surfing. There oftentimes are too many people in a home so that it's not safe living conditions for anyone because they have nowhere else to be. Or they are also on the street. We do have people in our region who are sleeping on the streets at night.
Or in cars.
Or in cars, yes, or in tents.
So Leslie already spoke to this, but our goal is to ensure that this is not a strategic plan that sits on a shelf and gathers dust for the next 5 years. So in my new role as the director of the Office of Housing Stabilization, I'll be helping us coordinate, and we're assembling work groups to actually start doing the work on the ground that needs to happen to reach these goals that we've set. We'll be fully staffing our Office of Housing Stabilization. We actually just hired a staff member to help with development and community engagement, knowing that we want to expand and diversify and sustain the funding that we know we need to have a strong regional system that helps people who fall into houselessness, but ideally also prevent them from getting to that point in the first place. And then we plan to provide quarterly updates on the progress that we've made on the goals in the strategic plan, both to collaborative planning members as well as our work group of people with lived experience with houselessness. And then there is a bill in Oregon, House Bill 4123 that passed that on the Oregon side, Mid-Columbia Community Action is a part of, and we've received some funding from to basically help build out our regional houseless system. So we'll be providing quarterly updates to the advisory board members for that House Bill 4123 pilot project as well. And then finally, we do plan to conduct annual listening sessions with community partners and individuals to understand how they're feeling about the progress we've made on implementing the strategic plan so that we can get kind of more public engagement on that. And then as a collaborative, we'll make updates on an annual basis, if there's any new information to consider or additional priorities that we should be emphasizing as a group. So.
And then this last slide, this is something that's currently happening in the Dalles. This is something that Kenny's organization is working on, and I wanted him to share because I think it's really awesome, and it's something that I would love to see our side of the river work towards as well. So go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, so we're in the process of building what is called a navigation center. Everybody's like, what's a navigation center? We kind of defined it ourselves. It's legislatively defined, but we expanded the definition. Usually a navigation center is a shelter that has some services on site. We kind of created something a little bit bigger in our area, and we are developing a multi-agency service center, so a one-stop shop, so a real physical place where somebody could come in to receive services and get services from multiple agencies in one location, rather than having to drive around. In our area, folks can drive to multiple counties, multiple cities to receive services or take public transportation there. This facility will be located in the Dalles. It will have a transitional shelter on site. It will also have all these agencies in one location providing housing services, physical health services, behavioral health services. DHS, Department of Human Services on our side, will help folks sign up for things like food stamps, vocational rehab, workforce programs. We'll also have services for the Native community as well as agricultural workers who make up a good portion of the population in the region. So we're bringing it all together to provide more holistic service provision to clients. And we were very fortunate that a community member donated 2.6 acres of land to us for this project. The project will only take about half of that acreage, and then we plan to build permanent housing on the backside of that same site. So it'll be great to have permanent housing along with the services all in one location.
And then just briefly, some other key projects that are happening. We mentioned Rhine Village getting a facelift. That is going to be happening. There is the housing project in Wishram that's happening, that's with the Yakima Nation Housing Authority. And then also the city of White Salmon is currently working on purchasing a lot of property that will be affordable housing. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, but that is something that's in the works. So are there any questions from you all?
Questions from my seatmates?
We do have a couple.
Please.
So how, and this is very fresh to me because I'm on the Columbia Cascade Housing Board. And we did have a little board retreat last week, and we're I was intrigued by something that was in one of your things about, that having folks that are actually users, involved as part of, because it is where we've identified that in ourselves, where we have I serve on all these boards, and we are not, we don't have any direct lived experience in the services that we are trying to advocate for or provide. And so how have we talked about, we need to do, it's really hard to get a houseless person to be on the board of and so I'm curious, how did you deal with that? How did you try to get those voices where it's not just a room full of old white guys that are talking about this stuff?
Yeah, so we
do have one woman, just for record.
well, because they are existing clients, some of them, we have that contact with them. We have that relationship with them. And one of the key things that we did is we paid them for their time.
Oh.
So if they're going to come out and share their experience and spend their time with us, we're going to pay them for their time. So that was one way that we did that.
Okay.
I would just also add that we've had a couple of meetings now with the current work group that we have that's made up of people with lived experience, and we've really collaborated among different members who have participated in this planning process to identify, who might be good to include in that group. And then we've also encouraged members of that work group to make additional recommendations based on their own networks. So when it comes to who that group is comprised of, currently we have, one woman who is houseless and who we've provided street outreach services to. We also have a couple of staff members who have either had recent or former houselessness. And so I think that's another important thing to know about our agencies, is that in some cases, we actually have people who come into our shelter, they've fallen on hard times, and then they get to know staff, they get stabilized and get connected to other resources. And part of that is that they want to get a job. So they might work their way up and start filling some shelter shifts. And then in one case, we have a former shelter staff member who's on the lived experience council who, I think within the last 2 years was houseless, but then became a shelter staff member after living in the shelter for a while, became a housing caseworker, and is now, helping people who were in his exact situation. So he has a really interesting perspective when it comes to his own personal experience and what types of barriers he faced and what was really helpful. But then he also can speak to what he's experiencing as he's supporting clients now that he's a caseworker. So we really are trying to rely on that expertise and the broader network that we have within the collaborative, including people who have lived experience, to continue building that work group as well.
It doesn't always have to be, some of the folks, as Kelly mentioned, are currently experiencing homelessness, but some of them previously experienced homelessness, right? And our goal with all of the folks are to get them into permanent housing, to have them stabilized. So we've got multiple, our regional shelter manager has lived experience, but is not homeless anymore. And both him and his wife actually work for our agency.
Yeah, we want that to be a previous experience.
Right,
for all of them.
Okay.
Any more?
No, I'll do it off channel. It's okay.
All right, well, here's our contact information. Please feel free to follow up if anyone has any further questions. If anyone wants to get involved, we would welcome anyone who wants to come to the table and either help out or learn more about our houseless community. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, and I just had one. I think your actions in here, I like it. It's not overly long. You get straight to the point. Here's our problems. Here's where we're going. I love that. One thing that I didn't see in here is supporting the creation of all apartments in our area. Part of our houseless problem is we just don't have enough units. And so there's the advocate for the rehabilitation, the preservation, the acquisition. But, when somebody goes out and builds right now, brand new apartments on the private sector, the people that are going to be moving into that might have been people that were currently or formerly in the houseless population. But in order for them to move to that next stage into a nicer, newer apartment, we have to have those newer apartments available. And that might just something to add on in the future of something you guys can advocate for, because like you said, nobody wants affordable housing apartments next to them. Well, what we found is very few people want apartments at all next to their houses.
Yes.
And you've got a great group of people that have all come together. And if you can speak with that one voice to the other local governments when these projects are moving forward, because every unit is needed.
Absolutely.
Great feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having us.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
We'll
And-
go build some stuff.
Thank you. And like I said, you all
That's
were-
hard for me. I'm a solutions guy. Like, let's just fix it. We'll just.
Yeah.
But as Commissioner Anderson said, it's a really, because it's the whole spectrum. It's not, you're obviously focused on the affordable and the very low AMI stuff, but it's like the whole system, as you get some of this, it frees up some other capacity. And yeah, the bottom line is we have just underinvested in housing for 20 or 30 years.
Absolutely.
And that's across the whole spectrum. And it's just what we now think of as higher end stuff, or the rents are what you would think of as higher end, are not that. You see these units and you're like, really? How do you cash that check that you're charging people? That used to be like a person starting out lived in that facility, that place. But unfortunately, it's supply and demand, and there is way more demand than there is supply. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's, we got to find a way to do it. So,
Yep.
so keep doing it. So when you guys have it all solved, we'll
We'll come back and tell
come
you.
back, tell us, and
So with
we'll
your,
implement it everywhere.
with your 2-acre property that you've acquired, I think that's amazing that somebody's willing to donate 2 acres at today's land prices. Are you going to plan on housing all of those different agencies in one area, or will you have people come through, or how do you see doing that? Because to me, that seems like a whole lot of plates in the air in the same.
Yeah, we're working on the operations planning right now with the 7 agencies that are committed to the space and the facility. This is going to be a roughly $8 million project. We have $6.5 million committed to the project outside. That doesn't include the land donation at all. They'll be located there. Some of them will be moving their entire agency's operations there. Some of them will have just staff that have corollary services that will help meet the needs of the client population. And then there will be other agencies like the Housing Authority that will have the Housing Choice Voucher Program staff will come in and help people sign up for the wait list for the Section 8 program. So we'll be bringing in other partners. We'll be doing some workforce classes in there. So some will be coming on site on a rotational basis. And then the 7 main agencies will be co-located there with us. We're moving our entire offices in the Dalles to this location.
Is that out in Chenoweth?
It is off of 7th Street, behind like Coastal Farm and Ranch and by the movie theaters in the Dalles.
When are you hoping to break ground on that?
We would be breaking ground this month if we thought we could break ground at the end of this month. So it's gonna probably be a little weather dependent. So yeah, and then the housing, we're working in partnership with with Columbia Cascade Housing to develop the backside, and we're also working with Columbia Cascade on the Chenoweth property, which you've probably heard about from Joel, which we've been.
I'm on the McKed board too, so.
Gotcha.
We're your neighbors the other way.
Yeah,
too,
yeah. So there's some land over there that we're hoping to have access to. So we've got some good affordable housing development stuff going on in Dallas, which is reflected in the goals. That 262 unit goal has those units considered in there. I think we've probably got 125 units out of both of those projects that would be developed there.
All right. Well, that's amazing. Thank you guys for the update.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Have a great day. Okay. Before we bring in Krista, can we do some of these engagements? We have a crisis responder that's supposed to start at 3, and so I think we should definitely sign that dotted line beforehand.
Okay. But there's 25 minutes to spare. It was time, yeah. Okay.
Probably number 3, the resolution, and
First, and then the professional services
and
agreement.
the other 2, and then we can go to Krista.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have before us a resolution in the matter of designation of Klickitat County Behavioral Health Department as a provider of county designated crisis responders, and that individuals meet the requirements of mental health professionals as defined in RCW effective November 6th, 2022. I guess my motion is to approve the resolution and adopt it.
I would second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve it. Any discussion? Just so you guys know, we've adopted this before, but we realized that the date that the Skamania County thing was, there was a gap.
Okay.
A couple days, so we're just
Cleaning that up.
Cleaning that up.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye for the
Aye.
resolution. Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have before us a professional services agreement with John Garner to provide designated crisis response services on behalf of Klickitat County Behavioral Health. My motion is to approve the professional services agreement.
I would second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the professional services agreement with John Garner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries.
And that's effective by 3 p.m. today.
Effective as soon as we said aye.
Mr. Chairman, we also have another professional service agreement. This is with Sarah Oaks to provide designated crisis responder services on behalf of Klickitat County Behavioral Health. My motion is to approve that professional services agreement.
I would second that motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the professional services agreement with Sarah Oaks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I want to do the others right over here.
Yep, might as well.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll turn it over there.
Go ahead.
I did 3.
I had to read more.
That's true. All right, that's fair. Okay, first, we have before us an engagement for legal services agreement appointing Stephen DiGiulio of Foster Garvey as Special Deputy Prosecuting Attorney to assist the county in responding to proposed amendments to the long-term solid waste handling agreement. My motion is to approve the legal services agreement.
I would second.
Motion and a second to approve the legal services agreement with Stephen DiGiulio. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
We also have a resolution in the matter of scheduling a public hearing to be held Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 at 1:30 to review the 2022 application for the public service grant by Washington Gorge Action Programs. My motion is to approve the resolution.
I would second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to approve the resolution, scheduling a public hearing to be held November 29th, 2022 at 1:30 for the public services grant by WAGAP. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
And then finally, we have before, this would be a notice to contractors and scheduling a bid opening for 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. This is for the Klickitat County Sadis Pass Radio Tower. My motion would be to approve the notice and to schedule a bid opening.
I would second the motion.
As long as you're going to be able to be on that meeting.
I know to Saturday.
Yeah. But at least it's at 1:30, so it should be good. All right. All those in favor of the notice to contractors for scheduling the bid opening, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Sassy Schroeder, would you please come forward?
Yeah, they might be the only one sitting here actually opening.
Oh, you'll hear that. Hopefully there's more than one to open.
It would be nice.
Thank you for squeezing us in. We were listening to your discussion earlier, and we pride ourselves on being fiscally responsible and working cooperatively with the board, other departments and offices. As Dan mentioned, we had a conversation and are considering placing one of our vehicles into the new county vehicle pool. However, we have a little bit of concern. And it has to do with the changing of the guard and the possible changing of field staffing hours and all of that. That is, will be Billy's process next year. So next year isn't quite firm on what's going to happen. We do require our appraisers to be out in the field, to have the transportation to complete their work. And we're just a little hesitant to commit without the board's assurance that if the assessor comes back next year or the year after that and shows with facts that the office needs the 3 full vehicles, that one will be restored to the office.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
I do
You know
have,
what the best way to show us facts would be?
how's that?
You had actual fleet management software in your vehicles where we could see how often they were used.
And that would be funded by
Me,
the board?
yep. If approved by the
Does
board.
does any other office or department have it?
We are doing everybody who wants it, I believe.
Oh, okay. So right now is,
You know, I'm just one
Yeah.
person.
That's
here.
good. I can't give you any assurance, so I'm sorry. I could give you an assurance.
No, and it's, to me, it's like we talked before. If you could show me where the vehicle is being used on a
wouldn't
regular
Miles,
basis where you don't need to share it with somebody else, I buy more. But if it's being parked and is being driven, 1,000 miles a year, I can't justify to the taxpayers why we have that vehicle.
so
To
with,
me, it's proof in mileage, proof in number of days used, moreover than mileage even. And what better way to do that with a chip that just goes into the computer and logs it all right there, where you could just print it, hand it to me and say, see, we're using it more than we need to, and you need to give it back. Okay.
How many days a week and months out of the year are you driving around on the regular for your?
Potentially, it could be 4 days a week.
4 days a week, all 3 vehicles?
No, not recently. Like in the last, well, with training not being in person the last couple years, so we've
and it
had
is
to adjust.
flexible depending upon the time of year. We do have times of the year where we require the appraisers to be in the office to cover with appraisal specific questions that the other staff are not accredited to answer. So twice a year, we have a time frame where they don't go out for at least 3 weeks. And the rest of the time, it's a rotational and then also dependent upon the weather. So, but at least 2 of our rigs are very actively out there on a regular basis.
So your third rig is more for going to training and that kind of stuff for the most part?
That's what it's been used for primarily due to its limited off-road capacity. So that would be the rig that we had spoken to Dan about being put into the pool. Just with the caveat that if we can confirm the need, that it be returned. We went from 4 rigs to 3 rigs when I came into office, and some of that was, we were able to do that because I don't drive a rig back and forth to work. I don't drive a county rig back and forth to work. None of my staff drives a county rig back and forth to work. We also have more of our staff their home location is closer to Goldendale versus the other side of the county. And so we've been able to go from 4 to 3. With the 3, there's been times when I've had to take my personal rig out with an appraiser to inspect property or with a current use specialist or something like that. So it's not common with the 3 vehicles, but occasionally that's happened. And so that's kind of a hesitation as well.
If I may. See, one of the benefits though of the pool is that on those days you could
Yeah.
requisition 3 vehicles if you
Or
need.
5.
Yeah,
If they were available.
Right.
right.
So, I mean, that is the That's the upside.
Yeah, we looked at that, and you know, if there wasn't going to be the changing of the guard and, you know, that potential, we'd be a little more comfortable with making that decision, you know, right now. But I guess with everything that the board considers is just to be open-minded to consider facts. And if it is mileage and days used, I mean, we can provide that if there's going to be software or chip or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're all for the betterment of the citizens and not trying to be considerate of the taxpayers' dollars. And if there's a vehicle that can be used for all county employees, and we're all for it. I mean, that's our job, is to try to do the best we can with what we have. I think those were your words, Jake. Just know that this is like a new thing for all of us too. So just be considerate of that.
So, you know, the two, because the two that go out that you're using right now, they have the assessor's emblem on the side and
All
everything.
three of
All
ours
three of them
do.
do.
Right, all three of them currently do, but you primarily just use two for going out and doing the assessments because they're all-wheel drive and everything.
Right, right.
And so that other third vehicle, it will have the chip on it. And every time you pull a vehicle out to go do that, we'll have the entire year's worth of reservations and the mileage, all that will automatically be done. So
Perfect.
I don't know if we need to chip the other two as well, because it sounds like you're using them both 4 days a week. If you're using them both 4 days a week, almost all year, that can stay with you. But say you and your deputy or somebody else are going to two different conferences, well, this gives you more options for
Right.
using vehicles. Yeah.
Later on, if I can talk to them about the benefits of the fleet software, and they want to put their other two rigs in there, there's many other features to the software that they might find beneficial.
Commissioner Christopher is paying for it all, so it's like, what?
I heard he's
That's
doing
what
it
I heard.
personally,
Yeah,
out of his
personally.
wages.
Out of his wages, that's what I heard. So I would get the gold package if I were you. Comes with a fruit basket once a month.
Yeah, I mean, we have no objection with working cooperatively and moving forward with something that benefits the county as a whole. We have done that with our vehicle in the past. We've allowed other offices and departments to borrow it, and it's been, you'll receive it full, you know, bring it back to us full. Even if that meant they put $3 in it and charge it to me and then fill it up when they come back. It's full when they leave. So, yeah, I mean, we just, I know how hard it is to try to get something back after voluntarily relinquishing it. So I would just. I did, yes.
I already ordered the signs for the parking lot.
Yeah, so if we have a way, like Jake said, that vehicle is going to have that in there. The log is going to have who was putting the miles on it, I'm assuming. And so if that shows that, you know, we're using it more than, the only thing is, how do you track when we need one and it's not available? Is there the ability to track that as well?
I would imagine in our software, because the same deal. I don't know if you've ever reserved a room on your Google Calendar. Same deal. You, instead of reserving the room, you're going to reserve the vehicle. So your employee may decide they don't want to, I think it's a Traverse that we're talking about. Maybe they don't want to drive the Traverse. Maybe they want to drive an Escape.
Right,
So they would reserve the Escape. Fine with me. I don't really care which one you take. They're all in the fleet.
right.
So just pulling the Traverse's data log at the end of the year to find out how many times you used it isn't going to give us an accurate information. We're going to need to pull assessor's office
Yeah.
personnel and what vehicles they used.
But the software has that ability to do that. Okay.
One less thing
We
to track.
It did 30 years ago, so I hope.
Right. So I do hope they do, because the point about what happens if because again, we're learning, we don't know, that people are either changing what they're doing or unable to do it because nothing's available. I don't know how we're going to track that, Because currently now, if I'm looking for a room and I go on there and they're all booked, it doesn't track that I
Right.
tried to book a room. I just didn't get a room and the system doesn't know that I didn't, that I had a need that I met in my office or we met out on the street or.
Right, and
So I don't know if there's any
I think
way
we're gonna
that,
have to
Keep a
have.
track of that, keep a log of that, but with how many, with 5 vehicles? and
I
how-
can't
6
imagine
now,
it's gonna be
6,
6, yeah.
however many we're gonna have by the time budget
Yeah.
season's over.
And also a hesitation is, I've spoken with other assessors that their only option is a fleet. And there's just, it doesn't always work out well with when they need a vehicle and things like that, like scheduling, training. Billy and I talked about that. We don't think that'll be that hard. We usually get a calendar at the beginning of the year. And so we
Right,
build.
you can go in and just plug them all in and get
Well,
it there
that's,
first.
yeah,
and-
but it's when,
Sorry, planning. You're
landowners-
screwed, Bochi.
landowners come in and, we need to go out and look at their property or destroyed
Right.
property or things that's like not, like the normal scheduled things. That is usually when assessors have had problems with having a county fleet. But it's, I would assume it depends on how many vehicles are in your fleet as well. But if there's trackability and, you all have an open mind, we would be willing to put the Traverse into the county pool. I think it's a good thing. It doesn't get used enough, honestly, so. But a lot of that is by choice. We schedule around it, so.
Yeah, it's funny, bunch of vehicles going into the fleet and you're like, which one's gonna get, pulled out the nice Explorer every time? It's gonna get all the miles
I
on
say,
it.
I'm sure we'll run up the mileage on one or two and the other two will sit there and.
The Traverse is a decent traveling rig. It does have blind spots in it and it's just not an off-road vehicle. So, that's one thing to look at and that's why.
You
we
don't
didn't
get to
buy any
pick,
more.
maybe it just randomly assigns
It's a
you.
random
Today,
generator.
you get,
You push the button and the keys
Yeah.
fall out.
yeah, that calls out, and you go beep, beep, whichever.
Your courtesy car is.
What,
Yes.
yeah, what we wanted is just a discussion with the full board, to let you know our thoughts and just to kind of receive yours back in this process. So that's a little different than a one-on-one conversation.
You're
So-
one commissioner, if we find that the 6 cars aren't being used, there's enough for 4 cars, then you'll know the fleet's either too big or not big enough.
Right.
So you can, over time, either add more cars to it. If all 6 cars are only used 20% of the time.
Right, then we're kind of
4
defeating, we can probably pull another 1 or 2 out of the system.
I
But
mean,
if
that's
they're-
what we did when
Right.
we reduced down to 1, is we looked at it and we said, well, without the staff's commuting use of the assessor's vehicles, we didn't need that many. So, and I don't think you're going to drive one, are you? Yeah, so there's that too. So, all right. Well,
Okay.
thank you for your
Uh,
time.
Question for you while I got you here. And this is going back to switching the topic to actual assessor's duties and stuff. On the, for 2022, so what we just got, or 2023, so what we just got, the county's budget-based, the fire districts are all budget-based and everything. From 2018 to 2021, the state schools was per thousand, right? It was a flat fee per thousand. Is that changing in 2023?
Yes.
I have to double check that.
So when the state school, so the state school used to be budget-based.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had the whole.
Bill that changed. in
Right, then they added the
2018.
state school too, and kind of through that, it was more rate-based. I know it is supposed to go back to budget-based. I cannot remember if it's 2023 levy season or it seems like that. I don't remember off the top of my
Can we
head.
email you that after we?
That would be great, because I looked online, because the mayor of the city of White Salmon, sent out this, here's the link, and it was like a year or so out of date, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's rate-based, and then it said, but it ends in 2021, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
and I hate, because people are always asking, like, how much are my taxes gonna go up? And it's like, well, if it's based on the 1,000, it's one thing, if it's based on the budget, that's different.
Right. And And gosh, I did see that and I just don't
It
remember.
was in our levy training, but I don't
Yeah.
remember it specifically saying
What
for
year?
2023. It just was like, it ended, like you said, in 21.
And then the other one was the EMS district. The EMS district is not budget-based, is it?
Right, they're rate-based.
They're just rate-based.
So when
Yeah,
the-
and the
so
library
when
districts
per,
are
it goes
rate-based.
Oh,
up.
library.
Well, yes and no. So I guess the library district tells us their rate. So, which is not usually how it works, but that's how the library district works because it's like a whole compilation of many
Oh, the whole
counties.
district, right.
Yeah.
But are they still limited to the 1%? The libraries?
I don't think so, because I don't have any limitations for them. They give us a rate, we put that in, they get that.
Got it. But
Yeah.
that's literally pennies compared
Yeah,
to the
they're like
school.
maybe
Although they're
36,
compared
30.
to the schools.
Yeah,
but
they're like 36, 37 cents. It
Yeah.
Oh,
seems like.
No, it's
maybe.
big.
It is that
Fort Vancouver, at the
Yeah.
regional library, I know when we were having our it's like, listen, you're running a library system in the county on, I want to say at that time it was,
Less.
no, because they raised their limit. So they were limited because they went and did a levy lid
Yeah.
lift like 7 or 8 years ago. And it was, their old was like at 50 cents or there was their limit.
Yeah, and
And then they raised it
still-
to 75, which was the maximum it could be. It wasn't they necessarily, they had that capacity. So they must adjust it.
Well,
within
and when
that.
you.
And I was like, really, 75? We only get to run the county general fund.
Yeah, but you all could have a higher rate if you chose to go out to the voters.
But we'd have to go to the
increase
voters,
your-
right?
Yeah, you can also do a
But I know at
road
the time,
shift.
we were like, when they approved, because the voters approved it, they were generating half the revenue in the county that we were for the general fund.
Mhm.
And we have 2 libraries.
Really?
So, yes.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago. I'm like,
some expensive books.
well, it's a very well-funded system. And so, but.
And when
I'm-
you do go
I'm
out to
I'm not opposed to libraries. I like libraries.
I can hear next week.
I know,
already,
next week.
or the week after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even when they do go out to the voters, that will typically set the rate for that year, and then it goes back to budget based, except for the EMS is different. But, and so it can fluctuate up and down based on the total assessed value of their district. So there's not a lot of districts that it specifically stays a single, rate for a certain
Multiple
period
years.
of time. Yeah.
So library and EMS that we know of. Is there anything else?
Yeah, well, in the library, I mean, I believe they're still, sorry, we haven't quite hit full bore levy season yet, and I just don't have the memory that I used to, but they do so they get new construction and things like that, so there are things that can increase their rate, but I know they give us their rate, because they did it twice last year, because I had to make a correction, so.
Okay. All right, well, I was just trying to figure it out, because people want to appeal and talk about it.
Well, and we encourage everybody to come in and talk to us if you have concerns about your value. We can explain the process, and we try to, bring it down to as simple as possible, but having brought your budget before to explain, how what you fill out affects what you get, it's not always that simple. So the biggest thing is most people think that because their value increased, that their taxes are going to increase proportionately, and that's not, like they think if they get a 35 or 40% increase in value, that their taxes are going to increase by that. And it's just dependent. Okay, thank you.
Do you have a minute?
Yes.
I have a slight break.
I have a meeting at 4, so.
Got an hour.
I know, I'm just being chatty, and sometimes chatty. An hour later, and
Oh, we do have a. What meeting do you have it for? What meet? Do you want to turn the recording off while he goes out there and talks? And I'm gonna go use the restroom. It didn't. Thompson's way out there. 40-acre parcel, I think. 20 or 40. Okay, we are back in session. We next have a public hearing to the continued open to further comment concerning the proposed amendments to the Klickitat County Model Decommissioning Plan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So it's a continuation of the model decommissioning plan public hearing. I did not include any revised copy in your packet this week. I do have a note that I need to change the word from should to shall. And like in section 2.1.2, and since the last public hearing on October 15, we have 4 additional written comments that were received, and I forwarded on to BoCC. 3 of them are from Mr. Wagner, and then 1 is from Mr. Eldrick.
And that was from last Tuesday or the one before that? Or
Between then and now.
between then and now?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've had a chance to go over 3.
You're fine, you'll enjoy it.
Oh, maybe I'm sure I read it though. Okay. Well, that wasn't major changes to the plan. Do we want to do the full public hearing and take public testimony since we can, and then go into, oh, where's that? Okay, I'm going to declare the public hearing open for the purposes of the model decommissioning plan. Thank you, Mochi, for the brief overview. And I will open this public hearing for the purpose of hearing public comments in favor of and opposed to the model decommissioning plan. I will open it up in the room first. If there's anyone who has comments to the model decommissioning plan, raise your hand or come forward. And if there are no comments, I will open it up online. Are there any comments on the model decommissioning plan? *6, raise your hand, turn your video on. Are there any public testimony? Is there any public testimony? 7211.
Greg Wagner with C. Mochi has stated each project has its own decommissioning plan and security bond. The county document she provided me proves that that's not correct. 9 wind projects have only 3 individual plans. 4 of those projects are owned by Pacificorp or are not required to follow the model decommissioning plan. The security bonds are nothing more than the ruthless energy corporations telling Mochi to trust us, we'll clean the mess up 30 years from now. Trust the applicant doesn't work. Most of the projects' decommissioning plans are the same. Only a few have their own decommissioning plan, but that's nothing more than the county's useless model decommissioning plan being copied. None of these corporations have paid a dime in towards a security bond. They are supposed to pay on a straight line basis beginning at year 7 and be fully funded in 20 years. That hasn't happened. 30 years from now, that will leave citizens paying for the cleanup. All the mistakes are hurting the citizens. The reasons these corporations want to do business here is they dictate to the county and the county follows. And what a deal for the big business. We are told to trust the process. If this, let's make a deal, is the process, it isn't working for the citizens. If you commissioners would have thoroughly studied the model decommissioning plan, you would have found the big mistake due to this revision. This mistake will become major lawsuits from the renewable corporations. You bend over backwards for these corporations and give them everything they want, never thinking of the impacts of the citizens. Your wait and see approach to governing is dangerous. 2 new enforceable model decommissioning plans are needed, but that would require work. If you adopt this plan as written, you will have failed the citizens again.
Mr. Wagner, I just wanted to make sure that was verbatim, the same that you had written in your email. Huh? Okay, I just trying to make sure. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the model decommissioning plan? Ms. Bosque.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment on the model decommissioning plan for Klickitat County for renewable energies. I don't approve of how that modeling decommissioning plan looks right now. I've testified before. I appreciated the 3 additions that were added to try to protect the county. But my point is of why I don't approve how it's written right now is that I don't believe it protects the county. I don't believe it has legal teeth. And I don't believe that you can hold these large corporations and their legal teams back with this model decommissioning plan. And if your goal is to protect the land of the county when these renewable energy sites come to the end of their life, then you should be putting all your efforts into making sure that this has all the legalities that you need in order to make it stick with these corporations. And as I witnessed you talking to the corporation last time, I heard the corporation saying they don't want these new conditions and they don't want this and they don't want to put down security bonds. So again, I do not believe as of date, this decommissioning plan has legal teeth. I've asked for it to be sent to the land or the planning commission in order for them to look at it. And if you're, again, I'm going to say, if your goal is to protect the land of the county from not having this trash left behind when these projects end, you'll put more effort into it. You'll get more legal advice. You'll get more community advice on this. Otherwise, you'll be leaving with these corporations and their legal teams, you'll be leaving the mess to the landowners. And when the landowners walk away, you'll be leaving the mess to the county. So please, at this time, continue looking at this, continue making sure that the loopholes are in place and that the county can hold on this decommissioning plan and that it has a legality standing and you don't leave the mess behind, or when these corporations want to leave the mess behind. And it has happened in other places. The windmills have been left behind. Solar panels have been left behind when projects come to the end of their life. Don't let this happen to Klickitat County, and don't let this happen to the landowners who trust that our county would protect them when they agreed to put in these renewable energy facilities on their land. So please send this to the Planning Commission, get more legal advice, and really look at this plan if your aim is to protect the future of Klickitat County. Please don't approve it today. Thank you. Oh, and I'd like to remind you that you are to take the testimony in consideration of the people who have spoken, not of the 22,000 other miscellaneous people who have not spoken up. You are to consider the testimonies given. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bosque. Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony on the model decommissioning plan? Please come forward.
Candy Magnuson. I agree with Sherry because if these are foreign countries, they can walk anytime. There's no way in hell we got the money to go follow them and get anything back from them. So they can go bankrupt. They have done it. I think President Obama, when this first started out, he had in California, he approved some solar company down there and it went bankrupt. Who pays for that? We do. And so as a taxpayer, I feel that you need to do a little bit more looking into this and getting some or security bond, something to protect us. We've already had one mess in Klickitat County. I won't mention names, but the taxpayers had to clean it up. Okay, So I think that we need to get some more information and get some more security on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magnuson. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the model decommissioning plan? Is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the, Elaine Harvey?
Yeah, Jacob, I would like to provide a testimony, but I'll just be called a liar again. That's my end.
Does that conclude your public testimony?
Yes, it does, because I'm just gonna get called a liar again. No
Uh,
respect by the Commissioner, Christopher.
Ms. Harvey, you won't be called a liar by me. I would be happy to take your public testimony if you'd like.
I will not bow down to Christopher.
Okay. Thank you for your public testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the model decommissioning plan? Is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the model decommissioning plan? And last chance, is there anyone else who would like to provide public testimony on the model decommissioning plan? Okay. Clarification of public statements, questions of staff, etc., from my seatmates.
Question to the planning director. The statement that was one of the folks made about there has not been any dollars funded into security deposits. I'm assuming we're talking about wind projects because that's the only projects that we would have that are old enough, starting at 7. Is that accurate, not accurate? Do you care to comment on that?
It's not accurate. We do have different forms of financial security in the current model decommissioning plan. There are several options that are available for the developer or the permit holders to choose from. So we have company chose to have parent guarantee. So with those that you're not necessarily required to have a dollar amount, deposit with the county or with the bank. We do have one project that actually has an escrow account that we're receiving bank statement every month. There are a couple projects that are owned by utility, and some of those may not be necessarily considered as public utility, but those such as Pacific Core at the time, but those were negotiated and the company provided sufficient information to support us to not require them to put down any escrow with the county. We do have an agreement with them and they support, like they provide the planning department every year about their financial security, their corporate statement. They gave us an updated salvage values and all those that we put in as in conditions of approval. They meet those requirements. They provide those documents to us every April annually.
Okay, follow up, if I may.
Yes.
So if I understand, is there any current project that is out of compliance or has been out of compliance with their permit specific to the decommissioning?
So for one wind project that is a component that a small portion of the wind project, which is Windy Point, Windy Flats project, the developer has an agreement with a public utility in California. They have a power purchase agreement for 10 years, and then they actually transfer the ownership to this utility. And that's the Sherlock Irrigation District. And so as I was doing my research, I realized I do not have any updated plan from them for a while. And so I actually contacted them, and that's when I find out that the project was actually sold, but they are a public utility. And they wouldn't require to have any, money deposit into an account anyway, but I did point out that they are not in full compliance at this point, and they are required to, provide us with an updated decommissioning plan just for that small portion. I believe it's 47 turbines, and they will need to turn that in to us. But for the rest of the Windy Pond, Windy Flats project, we do have a current decommissioning plan in place.
Clarification question, either the public is confused or I'm confused. Does this new model decommissioning plan, if approved, put all the conditions of this model decommissioning plan on every single one of the past ones that are already built? Do they have to renegotiate their contracts? Or is this only for current ones that are going in?
I believe this would be for any project that require to have a decommissioning plan, because
Going forward or in the
going
past?
forward, because what happened in the past is they met the county requirement at the time. The update is to just clarify, the provision. This is for both wind and solar. And, we do recognize parent guarantee may have some issues. The risk is higher, based on the conversation I had with the prosecutors in the treasurer's office. Therefore, we recommend to remove that as one form of the financial security. And we also trying to not to allow the salvage value to be accounted for the total cost of decommissioning. So it does not go back to revisit. Whether we adopt this proposal or not, it does not affect all those wind projects that we have a decommissioning plan on file.
That's what I thought. Thank you, ma'am.
Other clarifications? Okay. Let us move into discussion of the board, and there may be some clarifications as well. And does anybody, would anybody like to start discussion? I will. As I've looked into this and the concerns and the emails and the public testimony, the parent guarantee, as I stated at the beginning, was what I was concerned about. And just because you're AA rated today doesn't mean you're going to be AA rated tomorrow. And just because you have however many billions of dollars of assets currently there doesn't mean you'll have them tomorrow. And I've always been in favor of the bond. What I'm not in favor of is escrow accounts with the county. Because what that does is it lets them think that if we pay enough money into the escrow account, we can just walk away. I'm a firm believer that the security bond, much like any other bond from any other contract that we do, road-wise or anything else, is probably the best way to secure the safety of the citizens, so that whether it's year 1 or it's year 20, whether it's 3-inch hail or 2-inch hail, or whatever the cause is, whether it be natural disaster, that somebody has bonded and backed that so that that will be cleaned up. And I would hope that these companies also have insurance that would, if something happened as well. But I don't know if they have insurance, because I know, like, with regards to timber project, like timberlands, the insurance would cost so much, nobody has insurance on timberlands. And so I don't know if these projects are insured. But that's my theory on the security bond. The other thing from our discussions with Avangrid is that they would like that these things be cut off right there at the ground level, because it's in hard pack and whatever else. I don't think that does enough, and that goes far enough. You know, with wind turbines, you've got to go 3 feet down, fill that with soil, and then you can move on. That's something that the landowners in their agreements can say, no, you have to remove the whole thing. Remember, that's still an agreement between the landowners. This is our model decommissioning plan for what the county would expect. And I would expect that, you know, at the minimum, they would at least go down 3 feet for any of these steel pylons. If anything, you would hope they would get them, they would pull them out, whether it's in rock or soft soil or whatever. There's scrap value involved with that, and I don't think it was quite clear enough in there that we can make sure. Just because I know they don't want to do it, I think it behooves us to ensure.
Shall, not should.
Yes, precisely. Shall and not should. But those are the things that I feel for the model decommissioning plan would be the best way to do it. If a company wants to come in and say, hey, we want to divert from this model decommissioning plan, and we want you, the commissioners at the time, to sign off on that, well, that's every set of commissioners' prerogative. This is a model decommissioning plan. This is not the required plan. This is the model that we're giving them. And so those are my thoughts. And I don't think that we need a different one for solar and a different one for wind or anything else like that.
I guess I am just trying to get a clarification about the salvage value. Because right now, is the language there is not.
No, not the salvage value. It was the cutting off of pilings and restoring the removal.
Yes, I changed that to
Right.
shall. That's a
That's
milk
the
there.
shall should he's
Yeah.
talking about.
I think she's looking for clarification on the third major change was the elimination of scrap value. And
Right. So right now, we're not, they can continue to sell the scrap value for whatever reason. We just will not allow them to factor in for our purpose is
Right.
basically how it's written. Okay.
When they have to go out and get a bond that says that they will provide, and they will pull this out and they will bring it back to you know, pre whatever it was there. That bond has to cover that total cost of
Right.
that deconstruction, whether there's salvage value at the time or not, it's not on it. Commissioner Crispin.
So my thoughts on this are, I think all three commissioners were pretty unified in their seeing of changes needing to be happening to this model decommissioning plan. I, for one, disagree with CISA's testimony, and which is the exact same as the solar company's testimony, which I found odd, that we should continue to allow parental guarantees and AAA credit ratings. And that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to change this, because that is a flawed protection for our citizens. So I disagree with both CISA and the solar companies in that regard. The scrap value, we've eliminated and disagreed with the solar companies on that regard in protection with our citizens, and by changing the should and the shall to replacing the land back into its form, that is another disagreement with the solar companies. That also protects our citizens. I'm personally in favor of the model decommissioning plan as written.
Commissioner Sutter.
Yeah, I would actually concur. I think the three major changes, the thing that really prompted the whole change was the parent guarantee, the recognition that there was some concern over how adequate your parent co-signing your loan is. If, again, it's your, just because you're a Fortune 500 company today doesn't mean you are tomorrow, and it's not. So the elimination of scrap value too was a major component, and then also the changing the should to shall, I think, gets us there. I understand people's concern, but it's like, don't sacrifice better in search of the perfect. It's a model decommissioning plan. It's a model. It is a significant improvement, I think, over protections than what we currently have. And if we do nothing, that's what's in force right now. We can't go back and retroactive things. This is from this point forward. And so I would support the current draft as amended And I think we are, I think it's time to move forward, understanding that it does not preclude a future board next week. If there's something new that didn't occur and it wants to be amended again, it can be. It's not a particularly difficult process to go back through and add something if we feel like we really missed something. Because again, we adopted, the county adopted the current one some time ago. We're amending it. It's like, because we have some learned experience now. So I just have faith that you're going to get, good folks that want that. And I will make an observation again, and just to Ms. Magnuson, for the record, I did actually read the lease you brought me. If I was a landowner, I would be okay with it personally, but that's me personally. And I do. What's that?
Did your lawyer okay it?
Did I okay it?
No, your lawyer.
Oh, no, I did not. I did. And I would see a lawyer before I signed anything. Absolutely. But I do think it is important to say that as we are looking at this, I've said this before, the people that are not here are the ones that would have the direct impact, meaning the landowners, the folks that are, and so you can either take that to mean, oh, they're either ill-informed, they don't know, they don't care, or it's that they feel fairly comfortable with the agreements that they have worked out between them and the companies, and they're not. So I think I'm good with the draft the way it is, and I hope we'll move forward.
So one other issue that came up from our last public testimony was when the security bond needs to be done. And we heard from the industry that the most dangerous time where everything could fall apart is actually during construction.
Right.
Because you're not producing power, you're not making money yet. If the market turns around or you lose that purchase power agreement, that company is an LLC usually, or some sort of company that isn't underneath that parent yet. I would say that the security bond, there needs to be a security bond in place for the construction of it, as for the term of construction, and then that security bond takes effect or follows into the operation of it. And I would like that.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you that the current one we're working on right now today can be amended by any future board, because it sounds like we're amending it already.
Right.
And I agree with Mr. Anderson that we should have that in.
Because right now, one of the changes that we propose, the 3 changes, instead of, in addition to the removing the guarantee, take care of the scrap values, we also have the funding schedule. Currently, the proposal is we actually ask the permit holder to start funding the security no later than 30 days before construction of the project. That is built into this one.
So that's funding. I mean, is that taking, it said, there's different ways, funding security.
It's getting to fully funded.
Right, but if you took a security bond out, security bond was for the full cost to remove that. That's what the bond is for. If you don't provide or you don't fulfill your duties, it's the removal of it. Like when we, have a contractor take a security bond out for construction, we're going to get this thing constructed, and if you don't do it, your security bond is going to do it to pay for that construction.
Right, but I think what she's saying is the way, if I'm remembering it correctly, there's a step increase of that bond over the course of the build. So today there's only 20 pilings in, the bond is small. 2 months from now, there's 50 pilings in, the bond is bigger. Isn't it a stepped approach
Right,
to
so
the bonding?
the permit holder would give a proposal to us, tell us what the total decommissioning cost is going to be, and then they can tell us how long it will take them to fund the total decommissioning. We set it as it's 20 years out because we estimated that will be, the time that the project reaches maturity, that they might either continue or renew the lease with the landowners and whatnot. And so we when they propose a decommissioning plan to the county, we can ask them to show us, how they're going to fund the whole project, if they are choosing a bond or escrow account or anything like that. We do not dictate how they're going to fund that to us. But they, instead of 5 or 7 years from commercial operation, that as stated in the current plan, that's when they start putting the money in the bank. We're now asking them that they have to start doing that 30 days, minimum 30 days before construction.
Are we setting the terms of how much they have to put in?
It will depend on the total decommission cost. So, because this will need to be reviewed as a part of the permits now.
Right.
Before we don't do that. And so we will take whatever they provide to us, and chances are we will hire our own consultant to verify, to make sure those numbers are correct. And then we can have that discussion.
Okay, but I don't understand, well, I thought what we were saying is that you don't take money and just throw it in an escrow account and sit on it for 20 years.
Mhm.
It's a lot cheaper to pay a third-party insurance company to insure you that you will have the funds to do that at that point. Now, that insurance that you pay, in essence, for that security bond will change as the years go by, but that's between them and the insurance company. I think what we've been saying is that insurance company, that third-party insurance company needs to be there before the construction starts, and they're paying the insurance company. They're not paying an escrow account. They're not paying anything else. They're not paying self-funding that it's, you're paying that there'll be somebody that's backing.
I think what you're getting at is the same thing I'm trying to get at. So if they have to start putting into it before construction, are we gonna make sure they're putting in enough during construction? So they don't just, okay, year one, we're gonna put in 10,000, yet they build half the project.
Right, so that would
The
be,
bond that's there, that isn't the max because it isn't fully built out yet, but it's comparable to what's actually in the ground.
because that hasn't been the practice that we did in the past, but that will be something that we need to start doing now.
On each individual.
Right, and that's why when I respond to questions before, I would say the decommission plan is site-specific, is only applicable to each project. What happened in the past is what happened in the past. But from this point forward, if we adopt a new decommissioning plan, those will be the factors that planning staff will look at, whether that's me or somebody else.
So do you, based on that, it's probably highly unlikely that someone will use an escrow just for that. I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's a business decision about them. If they want to park their money in an account, that's their business if they want to do that. But the question is going to be, what is an adequate, I mean, the market would figure that out as far as a bond, because the day I start construction, the bonding company knows how much exposure they have, and what they charge me for that is going to reflect that. So it's going to go up and down. As there's more of it constructed, at some point, the bonding company may think, oh, well, there's enough asset here. The risk is actually less. It hasn't started generating yet. And that, again, the market's going to settle all that. I don't have to figure that all out. But I don't want to say that. I guess the problem we're going to have, though, is if they have the option of funding an escrow account, what's that number going to be at this? Because now we're having to kind of determine what that level of liability is. Again, I agree. I think it's credible what the industry said about once it's operating, it's got a purchase power agreement, your exposure is pretty low. Like it's an asset now. It's fine for except for acts of God, which you're always going to have. I mean, and you can't, it could, the 3-inch hail storm that comes, but your exposure is much less limited during, like they said, the most critical piece, the most danger is at the beginning, because you know, they don't have that much asset in the ground that you could salvage and get something out of. You don't have a purchase power agreement maybe, and so we're gonna have to figure that out as far as what if you.
Consultant part you're talking about?
Yes,
But
like,
again, though, the escrow account, at any time, they could take the escrow money if they need to use it somewhere else and pull it.
No,
Versus
because
a-
it's tied to, I mean, any escrow I've ever been involved with, it is tied to that project. It's not, that's why it's an escrow. I can't use it. When I put my money in escrow, I can't go, oh, I need to make my car payment. I'm gonna take it and pay my car payment. No, it's sitting there for that. That's why I said, I can't believe anybody really probably do it, because you're gonna have all this money sitting there. That's
the only escrow account that we have for decommissioning plan for a wind project, it actually require county treasurer's signatures on it, so it's tied to the county. So if they want to
It's an
withdraw the
accounting
fund,
system, yeah.
they would need to get county sign off on it, is my understanding.
But their plan at the end of that is to use that money to do the deconstruction. The decommissioning of it at some point.
Yes, like they've pre-funded, it's sitting there.
I mean, with interest rates going up, if they want to do it that
Maybe.
way. But we still don't have, so what if the act of God or whatever happens in year 3 and you only got a small amount in your escrow account and there's nothing else backing that?
Right. So as I said, we're gonna have to, before we approve that, you'd have to factor that in to know, which again, the bonding companies are gonna do the same thing, because they're gonna have to do all that to figure out what their rate is.
Right, but I think we're all arguing the same thing.
We
I
are.
think
We're
that's
arguing
what
the same
she's
thing.
Saying is, each individual decommissioning plan will then probably go to a consultant, which is gonna look at those numbers and make sure that the county is safe and represented before we sign off on that individual decommissioning plan for that individual project.
And that's all gonna happen during permitting now, prior to anything, basically. So it's different than what we currently have done, where after the fact.
My intention is if this is going to be an energy overlay zone permit, I will not sign off on the EOC permit until we have a roll agreement and a decommissioning plan approved and signed.
Right. Okay, I'm good. I reaffirm my support for the current draft, because it's already, our amendment was already anticipated.
Okay.
One clarification point, when we do come up with the individual decommissioning plans for the individual projects, after the consultant and all that stuff, will that individual decommissioning plan come before this board for signature?
It depends on the forms of financial security. So if they have like a bond or escrow account, that is something that I have no authority to sign off of. I believe that's something that will need to involve the board or the treasurer's office, then I'll bring that to you. But if the form is for like, if they're a public utility, then you may not come to the board because they meet this.
You don't need it. They're public.
Is that, I mean, could we require a public utility to have a bond?
The answer was no to that, but maybe they will.
If you require that, then we can take out the public utility. Then they won't have that option for them. They're just like anybody else.
I think the idea behind it is that a public utility already had, like, public utilities can't go, I mean, the public owns them, and so they're on the hook.
They don't get to go bankrupt.
They don't get to go bankrupt. The rates get increased, that you have a guarantee as much as anything. I mean, we have a tax base that in theory is bulletproof, that we can collect and pay the debt, whatever it is. And that's the idea behind why a public utility, it's the public, you're getting a bond from the public for the public. So it's.
And once again, I did talk with the treasurers and the prosecutors, and by removing the parent guarantee, and I did ask them if the remainder options, the other 4 options, including the escrow account, are those acceptable? And they have no further comment on that. And I rely on them because they know this better than I am.
Okay.
All right. Do you guys want to hold it over and read it one more time, or somebody like to make a motion? Yes, ma'am.
I believe he did. I thought he was in discussion.
Yeah, I thought I closed it.
We just do it again.
Well, just, all right. I will now close the public hearing to further public testimony, as I thought we'd already done, and move into further discussion by the board and a possible motion or action. There's been a lot of discussion on this over multiple weeks.
I have no further discussion, sir.
Would you feel good about holding this over, or would you like to make a motion?
I'm ready for a motion if you want a motion.
Yeah, I would.
Whenever.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the new model decommissioning plan with the proposed amendments. Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to adopt the model decommissioning plan that has been presented with the amendments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank
on
you
this.
for all your hard work.
Long and a lot of paperwork.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have board pending? Gentlemen, do you have anything?
I think I hit all my things.
I know, it's like a. No, I'm good. Currently.
Let me look at my list. Oh, I printed it out. Oh, let me go grab this real quick.
You want some of these down there?
All right, here you can have them. So I wanted to talk to you gentlemen a little bit about directions with regards to our meeting that we had with the water district. And, that was a large packet of papers and a lot of things that were said in a short amount of time. I don't want to talk about the actual water right. That's its own thing, and we've got stuff going there. The actual airport does have some issues, and that is that Mr. Dixon continued to state that there was a WAC 13A 20020 that requires every building to have its own meter. And so I thought that was kind of weird because there's a lot of big complexes that you have one big water line that comes into it. Sure. Think of large industrial businesses and such. And so I got with David Kavanaugh and we tracked down where this came from, and it actually wasn't a WAC or an RCW. It was from the town of Wilbur, Washington.
Kind of what?
Town of Wilbur, Washington's local city ordinance.
They're the only ones that has this?
Yep. And then, so we did go through the actual WAC, and a complex with multiple buildings being served as a single connection is allowed. And then I put the different statements from the transcript of what Mr. Dixon stated there. And so the discussion is, in order to meter every single one of those buildings, we have to do engineering, we have to do design, and then we have to go out there and build it. And putting in all the line and the meters and doing all that for that terminal complex was probably going to be a couple $100,000. And right now, everything in that terminal complex, that's, I believe, all one lot, is being metered, gone through a meter, I don't know, and we have no leaks, so I don't know why we would want to meter all of, put a meter to every single one. Seems like a lot of work and a lot of money for not a lot of gain. Now, if we ever do a new terminal building or a jet center or something like that, where we're gonna put, a big brand new line through there, I think it makes complete sense then at that time to put a new line and fire hydrants and everything else. But the cost associated with just to put meters on every one of these things when it isn't even in a whack just doesn't make sense to me. So I wanted to check in with you gentlemen, because we were looking at spending money to have one of the local consulting companies start designing this new water system. And I don't know why we put in a new water system when we're not building the big jet center or anything, because then you're gonna have to go through and tear it up again and put in something new.
What about because I'm remembering before that we did, and it was mostly around, it wasn't necessarily the water connections, it was around the fire hydrant, that there is not a 6-inch water main. And so that we had serving that fire hydrant, and I'm recalling before that was really what the impetus was for putting the new water line in, was that we needed to put a new water line in. For fire flow in that area, because it's only a 3-inch line, I believe, which is not adequate for, it's certainly better than nothing.
You think about it, you've got a 3-inch line going to a hose that's 2.5 inches.
Right.
So is it gonna provide the fire flow?
Well, I'm just saying, I know what the standard is, a 6-inch, that fire hydrants have to be on a 6-inch water main.
That's for new construction and everything like that. The whole rest of the Dallasport Peninsula doesn't have 6-inch lines going to any of the fire hydrants. And so when you do the new construction.
Well, except ours in our business park.
Right, but that's new construction. So new construction and new business park, absolutely. But when we go to build a jet center or, build something new in there, then that would make sense to redo that whole line, because then you're building the line to the buildings that are getting built. But there's nothing that's changing.
So, or I'm curious, I guess it's related, but the allegation that there's a bunch of bathrooms in hangars, is that accurate or not accurate? And is that, again, it's not a water meter issue, because every drop is still getting metered. It's just those hangars are supposed to be dry. They're not supposed to have bathrooms in them. And is that accurate or not?
It was, so.
And how is that happen? How are people getting connections?
We built those hangars.
Right.
We built that and put the bathrooms in 2 of those, the B and C hangars. Or B and D, each have a bathroom in it. But that was built, I've got I had Jeff look at all the times and all the dates and everything, right? And in our 2011 agreement, it says the district shall not charge the airport properties any system development or hookup fees, SDCs, for existing connections on the airport properties. That was all there prior to.
I guess that's the part I need to understand to be sure. Has there been no new bathrooms or anything installed since 2011?
There has been one, and that is the training hangar, and that was finished in June of 2012, which the 2012 agreement was signed in March. But, the building permit was done a year probably prior to that. And so we can still look at that. So there might be one SDC, but in section B, there's also, we had 30 SDCs, $500,000, 30 SDCs. We would subtract one of those off for that training hangar. You wouldn't have to exchange money, give it to you just to give it back to us, considering we own it. So I wanted to talk to you gentlemen before I talk to the city manager.
Honestly, I don't know enough about it to make an educated decision.
Okay, well, there's information there. You can look into it. If you'd like, I can get you the transcript of the meeting. Or Lee can get you the transcript of the meeting.
This is the Dallasport airport meeting or our meeting?
Our meeting.
I remember that part of it, but I don't know the legalities of hookups on water lines.
Well, I've read it twice and I still have a hard time remembering it all. I guess, you know, in the end, this is public dollars and I want to be fiduciarily responsible for those public dollars and not go and put a meter to every single toilet when it is a complex.
Well, I guess that's my question, is if it is a complex and under Washington law, you don't have to, how does Dallasport Water get the jurisdiction to tell you you have to?
Well, he was reading from the town of Wilbur's ordinance.
Didn't come back with an RCW.
Well,
But the only thing I'm going on, again, the 14 connections or not, that's not really the issue to me. I do have a recollection of before, though, and you know, maybe it was ill-conceived or it was the reason doesn't exist, but we collected the STC charges that were owed to us when the life flight and stuff went. And the whole point, I mean, it was right in is that the reason we were collecting those dollars was we were going to use it for the engineering to engineer this new water line. So why would we have engineered a water line that we didn't need except?
they were telling us to do that.
No, it was, I mean, they were asked, but it was mostly around, again, the fire flow was that and yeah, I mean, as far as, I guess, if it's pre-existing and the 3-inch line is okay, but if truthfully, no new connections have been added to that existing line since the agreement, they're all before that, then yes, they're covered. But if any of them have come after that, then it has to comply with the new rule. And that's the part I'm a little hazy on. It's like if it's like we have two different stories. Somebody's not telling the truth or is mistaken. So we either, again, if every connection that was there is the connection that existed prior, then we're right. We don't owe anything. It's grandfathered in under the owner. And as long as we don't make an improvement, we don't have to upgrade, not to do any of that stuff, and it's better. But if we've added something afterwards, then, and that's the part I'm a little concerned about, unless we just, you know, it was the right thing to do. And we thought, well, it's time, you know, it's a substandard line and we need to fix it. And this is a way to pay for the engineering for it. And we did, but like we collected the money, and as far as I know, we never did the engineering. Maybe we did. So it's like, what did we spend that? Well, we, meaning it wasn't us, but it was the airport fund. It got paid into the airport fund. And that was the expressed purpose of it at the time. I would just be curious about that, but that's
technically, the express purpose of the STCs to be paid back to us was to cover our costs for what we had done.
Right.
Just because we wanted to take that money and reinvest it.
Right, and
that's a
again,
different line.
that was right, that is true, but it was to be reallocated for engineering of that was.
Well, I would recommend we hold this over for future discussion.
Okay, well, I just wanted to give it to you.
No, that's good.
Okay. That was mine. With that, I would entertain a motion because I know you have a meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn today's workshop or today's meeting. We do have, if Dave's ready, let him make the motion.
Okay. I can read it. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting until 10:45 on Thursday, November 10th for scheduled workshops. It should be noted that the Board of Commissioners will not be meeting next week, the week of November 14th, due to conflicting schedules, resulting in the inability to attain a quorum. that we will resume our next regular board meeting Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. But we will be here for workshops this Thursday.
And also that all three of us will be on the childcare committee meeting. tomorrow night.
Yes, so we're not going to talk because we're all listening, so
And
that's actually kind of good.
and that we will be on the radio on Thursday.
I would second that motion.
There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you all. Did you sign all this? Are you coming back?